Let's get through the boring bit quickly. We need fiber, some thatch, wood, stone, a pick, more wood and thatch, some flint, a hatchet, some clothes to keep things decent, and a few more narco berries for the primal spear. Nope. After a few miserable attempts to shoot down an ichthy, I decided to go back to my gathering job and avoid all fauna. Let's pump me some weight. I spotted some ovis I wanted to eat when a drakeling started to attack it. I quickly crafted a torch in hopes of taming the drakeling, but the sheep kept distracting it. The ovis finally gave up and I decided to go in for some free hide. But yeah, the drakeling changed its diet to human. And there goes the first of my many future gravestones. Back to punching trees, I guess. Are you gonna finish that, Mr. Komodo? No? Haha, don't mind if I do. That's a lot of hide. Let's try this again, shall we? Yeah, come here. Wait, where are you going? Okay, what level is the raft? Not there yet. Next, I crafted a campfire to cook some mutton. I'm too heavy. Now it's too close to the water. There we go. Whoa! He's fast. That is a primal tech trike, and he's really strong. Not tameable, unfortunately. Luckily, he was distracted by something else and I managed to get away. I started day 2 by crafting some bolas and looking for a victim. Megalanias have a lot more HP than I thought. After pumping some points into health, I was able to get myself a raft to make survival a little bit easier. So I got me some storage, a bed, and some artillery since there is no chance of fighting with melee weapons in this mod. I placed down the furniture, put some meat on the cooker, unloaded my inventory and got ready for one more round of harvesting before departure. I should focus on a forge. I should have stayed on the raft. I managed to escape with no further damage to me or my belongings. And I continued to sail along the beach, passing the volcano. This will come in handy. I found a relatively safe spot for me to grab some more resources. And after some parkour involving an endangered species of turtle, I set up the refinery, mortar and pestle, and the smithy. I upgraded my pick to metal tier and went back to smashing some more metal nodes. No! Yeah, I'm dead. Go away. All it takes is just one dodo to ruin your fun. I thought I could lure it down somehow so I can grab my bag, but I mean, he did fall, so draw? I needed a plan. A plan consisting of a bola and a few well-placed arrows. There's space for only one pick on this beach. Only one way down from here. I grabbed my stuff once again and mined some more metal to be able to make a crossbow and a chaos smithy. Next was the hatchet and a chaos forge, which I could have crafted the first time instead of the vanilla one. With the ability to make toxic ingots, I made myself a primal grappling bow, which is just a reusable grappling hook, and in the morning of day 3 I set off again in search of more metal and possibly a flyer. It took me a while to realize I cannot grapple when encumbered. Am I persistent or what? These little islets seemed relatively safe since it mostly spawned Pelagornis, so I knocked one out and tried to tame it. You eat fish, don't you? I spent about 30 arrows taking down a toxic Pela, just for it to glitch out and fall through the mesh. Oh, a blue drop with the usual nothing good inside. I found an alpha Pelagornis trotting around, and it gave me the perfect opportunity to secure some alpha blood for some alpha narcotics, which are the main ingredient for crafting alpha trank arrows. Apart from the arrows, of course. On the morning of day 4 I set off again, but this time in search of a more permanent place. Preferably somewhere away from all the nuclear conflict. Looking at you, Demonics. And before I knew it, there it was. An elevated platform on the ocean side. The perfect place for an antisocial guy like me. So I got up there and set up a small camp. While setting up the camp though, I started craving some dodo blood and I found a whole gang of these little buggers. Using the grapple, they were merely a nuisance and soon I turned them into precious bloods and hide. Are you friendly? I will always hate you. Who needs flyers? Well, I do apparently. Giant bee honey. What a surprise. Just die, will ya? Now I know the upgrade station is incredibly cheaty, but I figure out for a mod like Primal Chaos, I don't want to spend hours hunting drops for a good enough weapon. Don't worry though, I will not use it to upgrade saddles, since the mod already does offer high tier saddles through its own loot boss system. However, I'm going to use it to upgrade my crossbow a bit. I got scared here because Dodorexes are quick swimmers and they have a really long aggro range. I got lucky here is all I can say. And luck seemed to be following me around since I got some fish meat out of a drop which allowed me to tame a Pelagornis. And along with its offspring, they will supply me with all the eggs I need for the toxic kibble. For the first time in my life, I felt anger towards a tree trunk, like Van Damme in Kickboxer. I had some time to kill until my Pelagornis was up, so I got to it. And that's how my villain arc on this arc begins, with this red guy. Before taking flight, I needed more chitin to craft the saddle, so I started killing some meat bugs. On day 6, I hatched some Pela eggs to ensure a steady supply of incest eggs, and I planted some crops I would need for kibble. I finally reached the required level for the saddle and I took to the skies to try and find some crystal, and before long I had enough for an awesome Spyglass and some Dino balls, which would make my life so much easier in advancing through the tiers. I wanted to tame a dung beetle for a steady supply of fertilizer, but I couldn't be bothered to waste time looking for one, so I installed a Dino Finder mod. In a modern playthrough like this, I don't see the point in spending half the time, or maybe more, looking for specific dinos every time I need something. I mean, sure, I cannot imagine myself playing vanilla with such a mod, it ruins the whole experience, but Primal Chaos, with so many tiers and explosions going on, this mod is a must. The next thing I needed was a berry gatherer, so I tracked down a parasaur and it had a baby. I didn't bother taming the dad. On my way home I found a cave that looked eerily familiar, and that gave me an idea. You're gonna rot in there, buddy. I spent the rest of day 7 mowing the lawn, and then woke up early on day 8 to tend to the rest of my garden by planting some more crops. This legendary Dillo seemed to have a pretty low health pool, so I boiled it and turned it off for some delicious loot. Now that's a decent crossbow. Today was the day when we started to move up in tiers. I made 2 pieces of toxic kibble, enough to get me a pair of dodos. I hate them so much. I put them to work straight away and the first alpha kibble was ready for the tummy of my old nemesis. You remember him? I thought, why kill it? I'm no monster, I'll just turn it into a slave. Day 10 found me farming some more alpha dinos to be able to afford a saddle for the Alpha Terra. I crafted another piece of kibble to get this guy a partner. It proved to be a bit more challenging than I thought. On day 11, I got the Pteranodons to make some sweet love. I told you I'm not a monster. Now we get to breed some babies. In captivity. Why are they not breeding? I tamed an Oviraptor to pick up the eggs I thought were falling through the mesh. But as it turns out, it's just a bug, they just won't produce any eggs. So I carried on with taming a pair of alpha dodos, so I could advance to the elemental tier. These guys are right outside my base. I'll have to relocate soon. I started breeding the alpha dodos because I will need a lot of kibble for the elemental tier. Speaking of tiers, I think we should discuss the bosses we need to defeat if we are going to beat this mod, and a bit about how to progress through the tiers. Toxic and Alpha variants don't have any bosses to defeat. The Elemental tier has 3 bosses that need defeating, each of them representing one of the 3 elements in the game: Hydro, Electric and Volcanic. Each element is weak against one other element and strong against the other. The triangle is as follows: Volcanic beats Electric, Electric beats Hydro, and Hydro beats Volcanic. So use the appropriate element to defeat each boss. You then plant the seeds collected from defeating the bosses and use the fruits to craft the next tier of kibble, which is Shadow and Fairy. This tier does not have any bosses, but you need their eggs to advance to the next tier. Legendary, Fabled and Mythic. Same as the Shadow and Fairy, they do not have bosses, but you will need their eggs to craft the next tier of kibble. Angelic and Demonic. This is the tier where the game starts giving you the impression of being overpowered, but not quite powerful enough yet. These guys have certain power-ups to help you out in battle. This tier has 2 bosses, the Angelic Overlord and the Demon King. These do not spawn in the wild, and you will need to craft their respective summons, and for that you will need to defeat a sub-tier of bosses. And that is the Origins. The Origins themselves do spawn in the wild, but throughout the game you will need to craft some summons in order to defeat all the bosses. These Origin summons require blood from various tiers, and more importantly, an artifact. The Origins are Trike, Yuti, Wyvern, Spino, Dodo Reaper, Rex, Raptor, Kyraku, Direbear, Carno and Argent. This tier also has an upper boss called Draconis, which will give you tokens to summon tameable Origin dinos, which you can later evolve into a nightmare version. There is also the Primal tier. They are wild spawns and you cannot tame them. They will provide primal blood, which is required for certain things like kibble. The next tier is Spirit and Chaos, and they also have 2 bosses, Spirit and Chaos Guardian, and they each require an Origin boss soul that you collect from Draconis. Another tier is the Primal Resurrected dinos. They only spawn in the wild and they give bones once you harvest them, which are used for summoning the next tier of dinos, which is the Nightmares, and they will basically be a nightmare version of all of the Origin mini-bosses. Ultimately, you will need to defeat the Death Knight, which requires you to defeat all of the other nightmare versions and collect their tokens. As a final note on the bosses, all of them will ground your flyers that attack them, but not when you attack them with weapons while riding them, for example a griffin. On day 12, I got busy extracting blood from the local fauna as I needed it for the elemental kibble. I'll be seeing you shortly. I tamed me an Alpha Dodic and an Alpha Argy. Hatched some more dodos to speed up the egg production. Got myself a fabricator and I upgraded my crossbow all the way. My first elemental target was an electric griffin, and I tried to tame it even though I had no healing potions. My Pteranodon got hurt pretty bad, so I decided to craft some healing potions and some stone gates to trap it. I managed to trap the griffin on first try, and I think I let a gap big enough for my Pteranodon to fit through. The griffin didn't feel like being tamed, so he broke through the gates and started torpor running. I needed to be able to shoot off the back of a flyer, so I settled for a vanilla griffin instead. While waiting for the griffin to tame, I spotted an alpha Anki, and I fed it a piece of kibble in return for complete devotion. Back to the electric griffin. I honestly thought they would float or at least gently fall to the ocean floor. Also, I realized while editing I could have just used a grapple. Using the oldest metal farming trick, I managed to get a good amount of metal for the smelter. This volcanic Meiguana turned out to be my first elemental tame, followed by this volcanic Cerato. You can never have enough metal. I spotted a max level electric Dodorex and I almost knocked it out, but I ran out of arrows, so I started side questing by emptying some beaver dams and then getting a generator to power my egg production. I returned the next day and finished taming the Dodorex, and I also ran across a mate for the volcanic Cerato. After introducing them to each other, my plan was simple: to get some organic polymer, skip the long neck and go straight for the sniper, since it makes taming so much easier. Especially after upgrading it a few times. This is so much easier. Now my electric egg farming is almost set, it's time to test this little guy. I'm telling you, I'm not sponsored by an electric Dodorex, but you must get one. Farming becomes hypnotic once you get one. Look at all the stuff I got from 10 to 15 minutes of rampaging. That's a lot. I will need so much cementing paste for upgrading my sniper. I don't think I will ever max it out. After crafting some more elemental kibble and stocking up on elemental bullets, it was time to get myself a pair of Hydro Dinos. I settled on these aloes. This griffin helped me a lot, but it was time for an upgrade. But this time there's no ocean nearby to hinder my diabolical plans. I was in need of more elemental blood and electric hide, so I slaughtered some of the male Dodorexes for a very nice yield. And now we have a wood gatherer. I used the hide I got from the Dodorexes to craft a few saddles to take on the Hydra boss. I also upgraded to an industrial cooker. And one more Meguana. It was time to attempt my first boss of this playthrough, the Hydro Guardian. I drew its attention with a bullet, prepared my small team and decided to fight it in the water, for some reason. Still, I managed to defeat it. The base was getting a bit small and unsafe, so I crafted a cliff platform and chose a safer spot not too far away from where I was. I spent the rest of day 20 moving my base. I used the tokens to summon the tameable Hydro Guardians, but they were all low levels, so I passed for now, and instead went for a pair of Volcanic Dodorexes. But when I got home, I realized there were actually two females, and I went back to get them a low-level mate. The Guardian was next for taming, and it took quite a few shots to knock it out. Once it was up, I tested it on some tames that I turned into blood and hide. It wasn't anything special, but it had a very nice AoE. Now it was time to face the second elemental boss, the Electric Guardian, and with a pack of Volcanic Dodorexes, it was a walk in the park. That was easy. When I got home, I planted the seeds and then made the arrangements for the third and final elemental boss, the Volcanic Guardian. I heard this one was the toughest one of them all, so I brought a little more backup this time. Well, the explosions are doing a ton of damage, that's for sure. Especially to my GPU, that is. I got home and planted the rest of the seeds, crafted myself some mythic tools and some kibble for the newly unlocked tier, and I set off to tame some egg layers, since I had no intention of actually using any of the tames from this tier for fighting. I tamed a pair of shadow turkeys, since they are everywhere and require only one kibble each. And for the fairy variant, I settled for some Argies. You had to be there, didn't you? Some random fairy Griffon caught my eye with its speed, and some bullets later I fed it some kibble and it let me ride it. Of course I had to get a mate for it. I named their baby Peter, very original, and I used it to kill a bunch of tamed volcanic ceratos for their elemental blood. It took a while. On day 26 I had enough eggs to cook some kibble for the next tier and fed some of it to a Fabled Therizino and some Argies. I set them up to breed and then went for a couple of legendary raptors. It was time to complete the egg layer set with a pair of mythic stegos. I got a bit careless and a gang of fish just shredded me. Back at base I set up all the egg layers for this tier. I pumped a few XP potions into my Fabled Therizino and pumped all of the harvesting levels into power harvesting, and then tested it on some stegos. I crafted myself a set of armor after that fish incident, but I looked way too pink, so I dyed it. Now came the moment when I was able to finally make some angelic and demonic kibble, but I couldn't decide what to go for. I knew it had to be a flyer. Ultimately, I decided to go for an angelic griffin. It managed to kill me and my Grifficorn, but when I got back he was already out, so I fed it some white dog feces and it was finally tamed. This is the tier I was waiting for. After testing its abilities, I saw some explosions, and this time I had the firepower to be throwing knuckles. Did you see that? They got melted. The next test was a Nightmare Trike, and look at that HP. This cheese method is also part of the mod, so don't get mad at me. Test successful. The rest of the game should be a breeze now. These nightmare dinos drop some really nice stuff. Like any great scientist, I continued my tests on some nearby volunteers. And judging by the results, I won't have much trouble deactivating some of the origins. Remember when these guys used to be a threat? Thank God I moved away from here when I did. This is not a safe neighborhood anymore, is it? This armor didn't help at all, so I put it away indefinitely. I carried on fighting some origins for their tokens and primals for their blood. As I will later find out, these primal bullets will come in very handy. Look at all these souls I got. I prepared some more kibble and flew off again. I tamed another Fabled Therizino. I fought a primal Kentro which almost ended my griffin. I tamed an angelic direwolf for no reason. I put down a primal diabear for good reason. Also a primal rock drake. I took the cheese position and spent a few minutes bombarding this Nightmare Rex. On day 31 I ran into an artifact megatherium and I knew I needed lots of artifacts for this, so I quickly emptied its pockets. In the pursuit of upgrading my sniper, I remember there was a cave on this map that made it extremely easy to get polymer. To my surprise, it was even easier than I remembered, and soon I hauled a truck full of polymer back to base. So I upgraded my sniper a few more times, built a chemistry bench for easier cementing paste, and then went off to tame me some more demonics since I needed their eggs for the last few tiers of kibble. So on day 32 I tamed the demonic Reaper Queen. And on my way back home I stopped to deal with the Nightmare Raptor, since I would need their tokens for the final boss anyway. I will never have enough cementing paste for upgrading the sniper. I tamed the second demonic Reaper Queen to get them started on the egg laying. With the cementing paste I got earlier, I upgraded my sniper some more, and I think this was sufficient for the rest of the game. I started to stock up on Primal Blood since we would need it for various things like Spirit Kibble and Origin Summons. I also ran into a mate for my Griffin. Another thing I needed for the rest of the game was Primal Bones, and we get those from resurrected primals. So I took some time to harvest some of them. More nightmare tokens and artifacts will definitely help me later on. I got a weird craftable item from an Origin artifact guy, and I would later find out that it's actually a kibble to tame the Origin variant. Pretty expensive stuff. I crafted one of them, but it was pretty useless since you needed to defeat Draconis to be able to get the tameable Origin tokens, so I put it away for the time being. I read the guide inside the Chaos Smithy for the loot boss, and it said to bring the boss below 10% and it would upgrade itself by 1 tier. I tried. I really tried, and I carried on trying for about 5 minutes. But nothing worked, so I turned it off. Hey, I didn't need to do all that? I think the info there is a bit outdated. I got some Angelic saddles from it, but nothing special. I spent the next few days hunting some more nightmare dinos. I set off to tame the spirit indom I found on the scanner, but like the dummy that I am, I forgot to record it. The indom was cool and all, but the aiming with the right-click attack was terrible and slow. But I decided to put it to the test anyway, against some Origins I needed the souls of. So I got some summons and it was indeed pretty terrible. After a bit more testing, I got the idea of shooting into a rock, and it kind of worked, since they were dying so much quicker. With all of the Origins defeated, I knew I would need a lot more artifacts, and the only tame that could help me with that is the Otter, because it can hold multiple artifacts of the same kind in its inventory. I made short work of the artifact Megatheriums, defeated a couple more Primal Resurrected Dinos, and on day 42 I summoned a few more Origins that I would soon need to take on the Angelic and Demonic bosses. I thought about taming a demonic glowtail to help me out in defeating any Reaper type boss, and with the power up from my Griffin, all the damage taken by the allied dinos inside the bubble would be redirected at my Griffin instead. I put the theory to the test by killing some Origin Dodo Reapers, and it worked out just as intended. Day 44 was a pretty important milestone because I got to fight both the Angelic Overlord and the Demon King. No boss battle is complete without assuming a cheesing position. Soon the Angelic boss was defeated, and immediately after followed the Demon King. So, on day 45 I easily tamed the Scorpion and then took it for a test drive. It had decent damage, but it was pretty buggy, so I decided to stick to the hero of this playthrough and go kill a few more nightmares. And just like that I retired our hero and replaced it with a younger version of itself. Not gonna lie, this new version is not very helpful. So I had it replaced. I tried another loot boss, hoping I would get a Nightmare saddle, but that didn't happen. So I carried on hunting for more artifacts and origins and prepare myself for taking on the origin boss Draconis. I died somehow. With the origin boss summoned crafted, I found a perfect place to cheese it, and I started to rain heaven on it. The boss works like this. At 90% HP it gains an invincibility shield and it spawns random, at least I think it's random, origins, which have a chance to drop a summon for a tameable version of themselves. To remove the shield you need to kill all the origin minions. It repeats this at 50% and 10% HP. I truly didn't expect so many summons, to be honest. The drop rate is higher than I thought. If I am to evolve one of these origins into a nightmare, I will need 2 summons of the same kind. I will have to defeat this guy again at some point, that's for sure. Now, if I'm ever going to have a nightmare, I will need a good saddle for it. But crafting one will cost a ton of materials. Which materials? Well, mainly demonic hide and ingots. The best way I know to get that is by taming a couple of demonic ovices. Unfortunately, there's only one of them on the entire map at the moment. You can never have enough primal blood. I was curious about the origin, so I tamed the Dodo Reaper. You need to damage it first before being able to inflict torpor. It took 3 whole pieces of kibble, and the result? Extremely disappointing. I should have done this prior to taming the Dodo Reaper, but I thought it would be a good idea to try and get some nightmare saddles first, and then check to see if I can get a second summon to pair it with any potential saddles I would get. First loot boss didn't drop any, but day 54 was my lucky day, as the second one dropped me Kairuko and Dodo Reaper saddles. Next, I picked a fight with a Nightmare Dodo Reaper, and it took me 10 to 15 minutes of constantly raining down hell on it before it finally gave up. In the meantime, another Ovis spawned and I snatched it and began breeding them right away. There was still a problem of farming metal. I picked up a Fabled Anki and look at the amount of metal I get from one swing. That's amazing. Check this out. 15 minutes of farming and it got me 83,000 metal. I wish the theory was buffed up like that. Time to get me some demonic blood and hide and get those demonic ingots crafting. Crafting the Draconis summon again required me to deal with the demonic and angelic bosses for the second time. Not only that, but I needed more artifacts to summon more origins. And the moment of truth had arrived. Would I get anything good, or did I have to farm up all those materials again so I could summon Draconis for a third time? He had less than 10% health left when he started shooting fireballs at me. After I defeated it and picked up my bag, I couldn't believe it. Another Dodo Reaper summon. In order to evolve the origin Dodo Reaper, I had to farm some more blood. Death became a small inconvenience in the grand scheme of things. That or just extremely trivial. As I was preparing to evolve the Reaper, I was thinking, What if this turns out to be just like the Origin Tame, completely useless? Well, I had to give it a name. Not this name, dummy, the other one. Perfect. Now let's test it. First, without any level ups. Not bad at all. And it's got explosions. The explosions harvest the bodies too. It's a bit slow, but it keeps moving forward when doing the attack. After pumping some levels, it became my strongest tame, and if the information is correct, they deal extra damage to nightmare dinos. Where does this go though? Well, that was a waste of time. Yeah, the Reaper did not have a saddle slot. All of that work for nothing. Saddle or not, I tested it against the resurrected trike, and it absolutely melted it. I started farming some Angelic souls because it seemed to be the only resource left that I needed tons of. Yeah, that's just trivial now. Doing great against nightmare dinos too. It seemed that standing near explosion created by my own dinos right after I cryo them would hurt me as well. More Origin farming. I did warn you it would be a lot. And that bug again. And one more round of Angelic and Demonic bosses. Please note how I do not need to cheese the bosses anymore. This is the point where I started to really sink some time into farming the Angelic souls I needed for the rest of the bosses. On day 82 I thought I would summon all of these tameable dinos and see if they drop anything useful. That was not a bad idea. Most of them actually dropped the souls that I needed, and I could afford to summon a bunch of nightmare dinos that I simply slaughtered in batch. I dedicated most of the remaining time to farming the Angelic souls I needed, and I must say this is gonna be the most boring part of this playthrough for me. I'm gonna skip most of it so you don't have to suffer with me. Time to summon the spirit boss. This is entirely too easy, man. Now for the Chaos Kaiju. I didn't worry one bit. And finally, the perfect setting for this fight. Let's see what the Death Knight is made of. Well, like the title says, 100 days or less. No refunds. Thank you very much for watching. Please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you all on the next one. Oh man, I'm gonna need some vanilla after this.